Welcome to the Hump Day Hangout podcast by Semantic Mastery, where we answer your local SEO questions every week at 4 p.m. Eastern. I'm Adam Moody, and my partner at Semantic Mastery, Bradley Benner, will be sharing his decades of expertise based on not only helping others, but running his own agencies and businesses in the space. If you'd like to join us live on YouTube each week, just go to www.semanticmastery.com/HDHO at 4 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays. If you'd like to ask a question ahead of time, go to the same link, www.semanticmastery.com/HDHO at any time and submit it there. Don't forget, you can get the Semantic Mastery Local SEO Toolkit for free at the same URL. Okay, let's get going with this episode. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hump Day Hangouts. This is episode number 606. Got myself, Adam Moody, and Bradley Benner. We're going to say hi to Bradley here in just a minute while he's taking care of some tech stuff in the background, making sure that everybody can view the live stream. Just wanted to welcome you and say if this is your first time watching Hump Day Hangouts with Semantic Mastery, first of all, thanks for being here. Thanks for taking the time, or thanks for catching the replay. You can always catch us at semanticmastery.com/HDHO. That stands for Hump Day Hangouts. And if you join or type that in or bookmark it and click it, between 4 and 5 Eastern time every week on Wednesdays, that's when we go live, and you'll automatically be taken to the page, which we update each week. If you visit outside of those times, you'll be taken to a page where you can watch past episodes. The most recent one is there, and you can ask questions ahead of time. That's a really important one. So we highly encourage people to bookmark the link, and that way, if something comes to mind during the week, you don't have to wait. You can add it. But we do ask people to try to join live. One, it's fun. We like it. And two, if you have any follow-up questions or we need some extra details from you, it really helps if you're here live. Otherwise, it's really hard to get that figured out. That said, we're going to jump into answering your local SEO questions here in just a minute. Wanted to say hi to Bradley, like I said, and then a couple short announcements. So, Bradley, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. Busy, but that's a good thing. You know what they say about idle hands.
Very true. I hated that saying when I was a kid. It drove me nuts. Yeah. And now as an older adult, I'm just like, man, that is so true.
Yeah, 100%. So,
oh man. Well, got a couple things real quick. Just wanted to remind everybody, we've got a few things for you. We obviously talk about the mastermind. If you're not familiar with it, you can check it out at mastermind.semanticmastery.com. That is for freelancers who are wanting to grow and become agency owners, and for agency owners who are wanting to take what they have and grow from there. Gives you personal access to Bradley, all the SOPs, a ton of information. I'm not going to go into all the details. Just go to mastermind.semanticmastery.com. Check it out. We got two other things that we highly recommend. One is the Local Ops SEO Blueprint. If you haven't been around Semantic Mastery a long time, you're looking for somewhere to get started, and you want a systemized approach to local SEO, then this is the blueprint for you. And you can find out more about that at localops.semanticmastery.com. And then last but not least, we've got a really cool kind of action-packed weekly newsletter. And that goes beyond the stuff that we share on YouTube in the regular emails. This is a kind of the quick hits, the best of, taken from a lot of Bradley's teaching each week. And then we take 5 to 7 actionable local SEO insights and really condense it, and you get an action item for each. So that's a lot. But if you just applied like 1 or 2 of these or passed it off to your team, you'd be making some serious advances in the matter of months. Okay. And this can take you less than 30 minutes to go through. And again, this is a weekly delivered email. So find out more about that at localmastery.semanticmastery.com. All right. I think we got a few pre-posted questions today. I know we got people joining live. Bradley, anything else before we get started?
Yeah, I would just say, I see actually one of the questions today too that I think this will be relevant to, but I did some training on Thursday's webinar last week for Cursor, and now I'm using Cursor, which it's not Cursor that matters. It's an IDE environment, like an IDE. So essentially it's it's like Claude Code or Claude Desktop or Codex. I use Cursor specifically as my harness, right, which is kind of the tools and the application that we use for working with AI. Okay. And so I use Cursor for that. I have been for many months now, and I really like it. And so I was doing some training in the group about that last Thursday, and I'm going to do a follow-up training next Thursday. So but really how to set it up, how to structure it properly, specifically for SEO agency work or local marketing agency type of a setup and a structure. And I share how I've been developing kind of the folder hierarchy with, I use what's called the ICM principles or folder structure, which stands for interpretable context methodology, which is really, really the most kind of logical way to structure folders and files that I've seen to date. And so I've kind of adopted that for my own agency operations, and am currently working through our roughly 200 campaigns that we manage to apply that kind of a folder structure to all of my clients, their agencies, and the campaigns that we manage under their agencies. All of that, like I've been sharing how to kind of what I think are the foundational elements for using an IDE for AI and for building and for managing your business operations, talking specifically to agencies, local marketing consultants, et cetera. And so I did some training on that last week about how to, how to set up the folder structure, what I call prerequisites or non-negotiables, such as the types of plugins and or skills that should be implemented or, installed and used. And then I started touching on briefly kind of some of the security measures, things like reviewing skills before just importing them into your IDE environment, API key security, that type of stuff. And so I've got to do a follow-up training on that, which I may still get to some of that tomorrow, but it's likely going to be the following Thursday before I get to it, because I've got some other stuff that I've got to cover tomorrow for one of our new members. But I just want to kind of point out, like, there's a question in today's questions that are somebody who's asking, what is my favorite AI SEO? My favorite AI tool that I'm using in SEO right now, and I'm going to claim Cursor because it just integrates with everything else. And I'm basically managing my entire business now through Cursor. I'm in there 10, 12 hours a day, every single day. And it's amazing. It's amazing what we're able to do now with these types of IDE or, the technology, what's available to us. And so if anybody's interested in that, come join the mastermind. It's only $49 a month. The training's there. I've been providing skills and workflows that I'm developing specifically for SEO and for agency work. And so I'm sharing all of that in the mastermind. And if anybody's interested in that, come check it out.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's hop into questions and go from there.
All right. Sorry, I got a double Adam on that one. We are public. Okay. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. If anybody's here, just chime in. I'm going to grab the screen here in just a second, and we're going to kind of go into some questions. Just give me one moment. Had a few pre-posted questions today, which is good. Region to share. Here we go. All right. You guys should be seeing my screen. All right. So the first question came from Huzzy, which says, thoughts on Google allowing social media profiles to be added to Google Search Console. That's the first I heard of it when I read this message just right before starting the webinar today, or the Hump Day Hangout session today. And so I went and searched it, and sure enough, yeah, you can add Google social profiles to Search Console. I had not heard that until you mentioned it. So I looked it up, and indeed that says that it's an option. I've not attempted that yet. If I had a few minutes more before the start of today's session, I would have gone over and done it with one of my own projects. But yeah, I would absolutely do it if they're, especially if for campaigns or projects that you're working on where your client, if it's client work, is active on social media, I would absolutely do it, right? Go ahead and connect that, because you're giving kind of more. You can also, certainly with your Google business profile too, you can add social profiles too, which makes that connection stronger. But I think anytime that you can add those types of supporting and branded assets to Google, the Google ecosystem, you're strengthening what Google understands about that brand, right? You're validating or solidifying what Google understands about it by adding more supporting, assets or evidence, right, that corroborates what Google knows or understands about that business. So I think it's important to do that kind of thing. So yeah, absolutely. Now that I'm aware of it, which is interesting that I wasn't I can test that with a few of my clients where we're managing their social media for them. A lot of my local business clients don't do social media. And when I say managing, that's not really the appropriate. We're not actually really managing. We're posting on their behalf. We don't do any social media management for any of our clients. I haven't done that for years because I found with tree service contractors and in like home service type industries, social media does not really produce leads. But it can, but it's not something that we ever manage for clients. We tell them that they have to manage it. What we will do is post on their behalf. So I've got a number of clients that we're doing that, where we're posting on their behalf. And, but it's up to them to go in and respond to anybody that, engages with those posts. We don't do that. That's up to the client to do. But for those that we are, by the way, the reason why we're doing that is publishing on their behalf on their social media profiles. And when I say on their behalf, I'm not talking about publishing content on their branded profiles. I'm talking about publishing content on their personal profiles. And the reason we do that is because it elevates them as a person who is a subject matter expert in their industry. Right, in their local market. Maybe they don't have to be thought leaders in their industry. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about if you elevate a persona of somebody that works at a company that, like a client, one of your client. So if you have a client and you can take somebody that works at the company, it's in my industry, the tree service industry, it's 99% of the time it's going to be the founder, the owner of the company, who's typically a certified arborist, not all the time, but usually they are certified arborists. And so we are publishing social media on their behalf through their personal profiles about, topics that are related to their expertise. So they're subject matter experts in their own local market about the products and services, in my case, services that they provide. So certified arborists can talk they can talk with authority about tree care and tree removal, tree trimming, tree disease mitigation, pest control, all that kind of stuff that, arborists are good at. And so by publishing content on their behalf for their personal profiles, then it makes, whenever we assign that profile to any content that we're publishing on behalf of the brand, but assign them as the author, that makes that content perform significantly better than if we just publish branded content with no authorship assigned to it. It also performs better when we assign authorship to it, that like from a persona to a real person that is active across their social media. It works better when you assign authorship for somebody that is active on their social media than it does if you just assign authorship to somebody that's inactive. So the reason I'm saying that is because we started doing that for a number of our clients, tree service clients. So that because we found that is one of the ways to kind of bypass AI suppression filters. What do I mean by that? Well, everybody can publish more content and better content now because of AI, right? We can produce more things and better things. But so what does Google and the models use to determine what it's going to promote in search results? And what I found is that one of the ways that we can kind of overcome the what I call AI suppression filters, which are, that Google basically not surfacing content at the top of the results because it's homogenized. It's very similar to what's already been said about that topic. And so, again, with AI, we can all get really good at publishing long form articles and everything else, but there's two ways to make those articles perform better. Those web pages perform better. One is assign authorship from a verifiable subject matter expert. That alone makes the content perform better. The other is to add unique insights into the content, a unique angle, authenticity that an AI can't really replicate, right? So that is, I've talked about this on Hump Day Hangouts recently, but something that I've started doing for the clients that we are managing social media. When I say managing, we're not managing, we're publishing across their social media. I just get on a call with them and just a Google meeting and just chat with them and have them share stories about things that are unique, interesting, funny, heartwarming, anything at all that is a unique experience and a unique human experience in their business operations, like in their day-to-day operations. So, and then we weave that content into the content that we are publishing on their behalf, because that adds a different insight, different angle than what the AIs can do, because it's unique to their own specific situation and circumstances or situations that occurred while that business owner, typically in my industry, was out on a job site, if that's clear. And so just those two are the two ways that you can increase kind of search visibility right now, with content that may be 100% produced by AI, but by weaving in those authentic signals, right? So authenticity, weaving that into the content, and then also assigning the authorship to a verifiable subject matter expert, if that's clear. So that's kind of what I've been doing for clients recently, and I hadn't known about this. That's interesting. So I will actually go test that with a few of the clients that we have. Just go ahead and plug the social media. That'll be interesting to see too, because if it shows, kind of engagement metrics, which I don't know, because I've not even seen what it looks like to have a social profile in search. Search Console, it should show any sort of engagement to a social media profile that comes from Google search. You understand? It's not like a social analytics, right? So Google Search Console, I've not added social profiles to Search Console, but it's not going to be like analytics for the social media properties. That's not what it is. What Search Console is it shows activity for search queries and clicks from Google search, if that's clear. And so it will be interesting to see that for the handful of clients that we're publishing or publishing content across their personal profiles for. It'd be interesting to see that. What type of results that is producing for both search related terms that are related to the brand and the company, but also for the personal profiles too. It'd be interesting to see that. So perhaps I'll be able to report back on that in a couple of weeks after I've tested it. Interesting though. I would absolutely do it, especially if you're active or the client is active on their social media, even if it's because you are making them active, if that's clear. It'd be interesting to see that. I think that would strengthen the connection though. So, all right. Tim says, excuse me. He says, hey, Bradley, I built a bulk form submission program. We just finished one actually. It didn't perform as well as I thought it would, but I just got notification today that we had the last test that we ran with it's called Smart Blast just completed. So I've got to go back through and analyze that campaign to see how well it performed or underperformed, determine how to improve it. But anyways, the question is, hey, Bradley, I built a bulk form submission program that runs locally for zero cost. That's going to be awesome. If I'm considering doing that myself. Really looking forward to using it. What service do you think is the easiest to sell via form submission outreach? So far, my best. Okay. So I've done this a number of times now. I've only done like a huge blast of contact form submissions twice, about a year ago. And then we just, like I said, just today, I got notification that we were testing it again with an AI agent that responds to all inbound replies. So Adam and I were testing that for something that we're doing at Semantic Mastery. But I've done a number of smaller kind of, targeted campaigns for contact form submissions over the last few years. I've done that. And where the two best results that I've gotten is either doing contact form submissions to drive the company that we're submitting the contact forms to. So our target prospect, right? To a landing or to an opt-in of some sort, so that you're not trying to pitch them or sell them on anything through that contact form submission, but the call to action is to send them somewhere to receive something, a lead magnet, right? Something of value in exchange for their email, so that you can build a list, because that list now is a list that has shown, raised their hand and said, they're at least somewhat interested in something, some product or service potentially that whoever, on your, like that we at Tree Care HQ would be offering, if that's clear. So I have had success with doing contact form submissions to pitch review services, reactivation and reviews. That's one of my front end services for Tree Care HQ. In fact, I'll just show you, this is just what I use for It's reviews.treecarehq.com. If I can type. Yeah, so this is just the landing page that we use for selling reviews. So like I send this landing page to a prospect when I'm talking to them about the service. But I've used the David Sprague's rep videos as a lead magnet for that for years. Let's just go take a look at that. Yeah, so this is the landing page from that, David Sprague's rep videos. Anybody that's been in the internet marketing business or local SEO space for any length of time should know what I'm talking about. So this is a landing page that I've used to, well, in a contact form submission, you know, if you send a URL in a contact form submission, a lot of the, you know, hosts and things can filter that out. It can be set up to filter that out because people use them for spam and all that kind of stuff. So what I typically have found, and by the way, the test that we just finished with for semantic mastery for something that Adam and I are testing, it did contain a link. And I think that's part of the reason why this campaign that just completed today was 15,000 contact form submissions, but it underperformed. I got much better. I got better responses last year when I did it for Tree Care HQ, specifically promoting exactly what I'm showing you here. And I got better responses from that last year, and we did not contain a link in the message that we submitted via contact forms. And I think that's part of it. I haven't looked into the data yet because I just got notification that campaign was finished today, but I'm pretty sure that is likely the reason is because we actually had a URL in there. The better option, in my opinion, when doing contact form submission, and I'll come back to this in just a minute with the rep video thing, is your contact form submission should ask for a reply. Like for the company that you've submitted the contact form to, the CTA, or however you're wording whatever it is that you're wording, should be to try to get a reply back so that when and if they respond to the contact form submission, now you get their direct email address. Because most contact forms, when you submit that, goes to like some sort of a catch-all email address. Ask me how I know, because Adam and I, just like I said, finished a campaign with 15,000 contact form submissions, and I had set up a bunch of automations. And one of the things I'm using for kind of to help with the automations is, so one of the components of the infrastructure is Zapier, right? And so Zapier, I got notification last week right after my subscription bill had, you know, updated for the month, which I was on a 2,000 task per month plan. Within 2 days, I had already used 80% of the 2,000. So like after my, you know, cycle had reset for the month, so I had 2,000 actions available in my Zapier account. Within 2 days, it was already at 80%. It was at like 1,600 or 1,800, whatever it was. I think it was 1,600, you know, tasks had already been used. And so I started digging into it to try to figure out where, you know, what was using all of the task usage in Zapier. And it was the autoresponders from the contact form submissions. Because when you submit the contact form, typically the web host, because it's usually run through webmail, right, sends an auto reply email back to whoever just submitted it, to the address that was submitted. And so I looked at it, and I ended up having to go in and add some filters, steps to the Zap and all that kind of stuff to eliminate the common language that was used from the contact form, like the auto response from the contact form. Thank you for. That's what I did, is I put in the subject line, if it said thank you for, then I would say it would automatically filter that out and not process that. So the reason I brought that up was because some of those contacts that we submitted, we got the autoresponder email first, but then within an hour or sometime that same day, or in some cases within 24 hours, within one business day, we would get an actual reply back from somebody at the company from a real email address, not a catch-all or an info@ type of an email. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying is, I found better results when doing a contact form submission service when whatever the call to action is, or you ask a question or something to where you get somebody at the company to review the contact form submission and send a real valid reply. And then that establishes two-way communication with that contact, instead of sending just directly to like a catch-all email address, like an info@ type of an email address. you end up now capturing the real email address from the conversation alone. But if you're trying to automate it to where you're, I mean, by the way, you can absolutely automate that because you can have the whatever listening, mechanism that you have for inbound replies. You can set it up just like I mentioned, where I have Zapier for this most recent test that was filtering out any emails that contained in the subject line, thank you for, like subject line starts with thank you for, eliminate it, right? Don't let that pass. Stop the zap right there, if that's clear. But you could have it to where any emails that come in that don't contain that particular phrase pass. Now, some of them were still automated because just the language in the subject line was different. But in many cases, the ones that passed were emails from the contact, somebody at the company reading the contact form and then actually the contact form submission, and then replying back with an actual question or something else. In the case of what we just finished testing, a lot of those were because we were submitting contact forms to home service-based type contractors in the northeastern region of the United States. So a lot of the inbound replies that we got, didn't actually read the contact form submission, the message in the form submission. They just saw a missed call or a contact form had been submitted and sent an email saying, hey, I saw that you submitted a form. Are you looking for a remodeling estimate? Give us a call and we'll schedule a time to come out and give you a free in-home quote or something like that, right? So what I'm saying is I would still get a reply back in some cases that they hadn't actually read the message. And so understand that with contact forms, you're going to have that. With contact forms, you're going to get a lot of automated replies, and you're also going to get a lot of manual replies, but where they actually didn't read the message. So I found that if you can test with putting a URL in there. Like I said, this is a URL that I've tested with where they can just click on give me my free review commercial. And then they go here and they paste their information in. And when they, complete the information, they go through a couple of steps here. And then that indicates to me that they're interested, right? And so they go into now a more aggressive targeted campaign, like a nurture sequence, for example, that might contain emails, SMS, maybe even social media outreach, like Facebook page, contacts, etc., if that's clear. So I guess really to answer the question, for what I found is either trying the two most successful attempts that I've had at doing contact form submissions on both large scales and which I've only done twice, and much smaller scales, which I've done a number of times, is either trying to build a list by sending them, not in the initial outreach. Sending in a link in that initial form contact will get it filtered out by spam filters a lot of the times. It won't even reach anybody at the company. So if you can, by the way, test it with both, but you'll get better results if you omit any link, refrain from, including a link in the message. But you can then, once you get a reply, if you are going with the reply route as your kind of primary mechanism, right, for determining whether it's a valid actual two-way communication has been established, then you can send them, after they've replied, you can send them a link to an opt-in page or to a freebie. Or if you're trying to pitch a service, then you can pitch them directly to the service and send them to a landing page. And that's what I started to tell you, was because this is one of the services that I did last year when I tested a bulk contact form submission service, the same company that we just finished the test with this week. It's called Smart Blasts. This was the offer. The offer was this, but this was the lead magnet that I sent people to via that contact form submission campaign. And so I got a number of people that actually wanted their free commercial or free rep video. And from that, I ended up closing one of those, just one last year from that blast, which was about 11,000 contact form submissions. I got one client. I pitched him this offer right here, and he took me up on it. And this is a $99 a month offer that he kept for about 6 months. And then in January of this year, well, he didn't end up upgrading until I think it was March. But in January this year, the same client reached out to me and said that he wanted to upgrade to full marketing suite, a full monthly marketing package, which include Google Business Optimization, posting, backlinks, citations, content marketing, the whole 9 yards. And so I think it was March when he finally upgraded, and he's now a full retainer paying client. And all of that, it came from that one contact form submission blast. That was the only client I got out of that one. And that's, by the way, why I learned, because of that kind of experiment last year, I learned that I needed to build an automation to be able to process those inbound replies, because I got fucking hammered last year by inbound replies from tree care contractors, but SMS, email, and phone calls. So I spent about a week, no kidding. It took me 5 days earlier, about 2 weeks ago, to build the automation right now that for the most recent test that Adam and I did, where now I don't, any email, SMS, or inbound phone call, I have an AI agent responding and processing each of those replies. So what I was saying was, again, just to be clear, keep links out of the initial contact form submission if possible. Try to get a response from anybody, like ask a question or something, so that you don't want to do a bait and switch, but you want to try to ask a question that is vague enough to where it opens, we call an open loop, right? It opens a loop in the reader's, the recipient's mind, that now they're curious. They want to close that loop. They want to get a resolution to, this lingering question, so to speak. It's a psychology thing. If you can get them to reply, now you've got two-way communication, and it becomes a lot easier to then send them a link to either an opt-in page or to an offer, depending on what it is you're trying to promote. Does that make sense? But the kind of the short of it is, I found that the reactivation and reviews, when it comes to pitching the local services, is one of the easiest front-end services to sell, especially if you can prove to them that they've got terrible review velocity or bad reviews in general. Usually the campaigns that, like, I don't like to market to people that have bad reviews, because it usually means that they have shitty service, and that's why they have bad reviews. But marketing this reactivation and review service to businesses that have low review velocity, because that's one of the most important things in local search right now for improving Google Maps ranking or Google Business Profile performance in map search, is review velocity. So this is a really good service, because you can very easily show, hey, look at, by the way, I shared this last week, but I built an app, it's a little script that it's available to all of our mastermind members, that shows review velocity, the average review velocity across 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, and 180 days for any type of a local search query. So you could put in like tree service, Pikeville, Kentucky, and it goes out, and within about 3 or 4 minutes, it returns, and it shows, here's the top 5 ranked competitors, or the ranked, Google Business Profiles for that particular search phrase. And here's the average review velocity for each one of them across 7 days, 30 days, 90 days, and 180 days. And if you can just outpace, right, collect reviews for a client at a faster rate than the average of the other the average review velocity of the other top ranked competitors, you can typically outrank them in Google Business. And so this is one of the services that you can pitch. I found works really well, because I can show with hard data what, like, the slow review velocity, and how just improving, outpacing review collection than the other top ranked competitors is likely going to improve the results, the performance, the search exposure for that client. So this becomes one of the easiest sells that I've had when pitching direct, like when I say pitching direct, meaning like it's basically a cold pitch to a contractor that I haven't established much of a relationship with. I always try to lead with this service because of that. Hopefully that makes sense. All right. There's some comments coming in that might be relevant. Let me see. Oh, wow. So we got somebody spamming us in our chat session.
Yeah, sorry, I just saw that. I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
You guys got nothing better to do. Go find something else to do, dickhead. Anyway, moving on to the next question. These are for people that ask questions that want help. That's what this is for. If you don't like it, you don't find this interesting, fuck off and go do something else. Okay. Moving on. Option 1. This is from Syed. He says, option 1, the first service first structure. So I guess he's laying out 2 different site structure options, and he's asking for a recommendation. Looks like for a locksmith. So treats option 1 is the service first structure, treats the brand as a modifier child page under the primary service category, focuses link equity upward towards the main service page. So that's going to be this format here. services, lock installation, and then there's brands underneath the service. I can see some potential pitfalls with that right out of the gate, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let me finish reading the question. Option 2 is the brand first structure. So that would be the domain and then brands, and then so brands would be a directory with the individual brands as subdirectories under that. And then underneath that are the different services. The problem that I see with that, I'll come back to the structure question here as to which one I think is a better format for SEO purposes. But right out of the gate, from just looking at this, I can see that there could be potential competing page issues because of the duplication. The proposed structure here looks to be like the old school structure that we all did in SEO. And let's take this down to a service area business, which I think more people can relate to. A service area business that has, let's say, 5 services and they're targeting 10 cities or towns within their service area, right? Under the old kind of methodology for local SEO, you would end up building a separate page for each service times each city. So if in this example, 5 services across 10 different cities or towns within the service area, that would be 50 pages, right? Because it would be service 1 times location 1, service 1 times plus location 2, service 1 plus location 3, etc. for all 10 locations. And then you start that all over again for service 2 plus location 1, service 2 for plus location 2, etc. So you'd end up with 50 pages, 10 pages duplicating the exact same so you'd end up having 5 pages for each location, right? 1 for each service, but each page, each location has those saying the same 5 things over and over and over again. And that creates competing page issues. That's terrible for SEO right now. So remember, guys, I always talk about the 2 most important things in local search. Number 1 is branded location authority, but number 2 is site efficiency. And site efficiency is specifically, you don't want any bloat or redundancy or competing pages on the site. You want to make it efficient for the bots or the models to come crawl the site and understand what it's about through through the structure of the site, meaning the overall architecture and the structure of the pages and the internal linking. So that's to make a site efficient. You want to reduce any potential competing pages and bloat, redundancy. That's not necessary anymore, right? You only need to say something on a site one time, right? You say it one time, say it well. And anytime that you want to reference or associate what was said with other pages on the site, you do that through internal linking. That way you you eliminate any bloat or redundancy, which prevents competing page issues. Otherwise known as cannibalization, but cannibalization is a bit more severe than competing pages, if that's clear. Cannibalization, I don't see that occurring very much anymore. It's more of a competing page issue, which means if there's a page on the site that is relevant to a search query, if there's more than one page on the same domain that is relevant to a search query, Google will serve more than one page in the search results. When I say serve, I mean give it impressions for, but not promote any of them to surface at the top of the results. And typically they're going to be lower in the results. More than one page may show, but lower in the search results than they would have been had there been only one page relevant to that query. And so that's just looking at this proposed URL structure, I could see where some redundancies would occur. And so I'll give you an example here on how you can how I would structure it if it were my campaign. All right. But the logic for here for the second option, which is brand first instead of service first, is establishes strong entity relationships with the lock brands up front via a brand hub, then nest the services beneath them. Okay. That kind of makes sense to do like kind of a brand thing. But I'm still going to talk about how to kind of build the structure to where you would reduce any potential cannibalization or competing page issues. All right. The question is, which structure two questions. Which structure do you find performs better for ranking the primary high volume generic keywords, locksmith, like city type of a search query? And if this project scales out to multiple locations or cities down the line, which setup creates the least friction or creates less friction, and minimizes the risk of keyword cannibalization across location pages? So that goes back to what I've been teaching for years now, which is one page for every service that the company provides, one page for every location that they operate in. And that's it, right? In this case, perhaps one brand page and one location page, right? So meaning for each brand and then for each location. You know, if somebody is looking for lock installation or lock repair or a lockout service, right, to get in, so a locksmith to get into a car that's locked or whatever, they're typically not going to be searching for brands. You see what I'm saying? So I mean, maybe some do, but I would think the vast majority of people would be searching for the kind of like what you proposed here is a locksmith plus city type of a query, right? Or, you know, 24-hour locksmith city, or auto lockout, right? Like car lockout service city, something like that. So to reach a wider audience, to get more exposure, generate more leads for the client or for the business, I would say focus more on the keyword first thing. I always talk about branded location authority, but I'm talking about the business brand, not the business promoting the brands of the products or services. Now, in some, you know, business verticals, that matters because people do seek out a product or a service by a brand name, and you can piggyback on that authority, so to speak, if that is indeed the case. But I would think now I'm not in the locksmith industry, but I would assume that people search more generic type terms instead of by manufacturer name or brand name, if that's clear. So I would do research to confirm all this before I started to build. But what I would suggest is targeting kind of the service side of things. But how would you do it without creating competing pages? Well, you create one page for each service. So lock installation, lock repair, each one of those could be separate pages. That's fine, right? Lockout service, like I just said, maybe 24-hour locksmith service. That might be a different page, whatever. But each one of those would have one page. And then you would have one page for each city or town that the company wants to target. If you were talking about if the project scales out to multiple locations or cities down the line, which setup creates less friction. Well, if you think that the campaign or that project is going to scale and expand, I would develop or design the site architecture with that in mind right up front, because that could significantly change how you develop the site. I've been teaching since like 2014, no kidding, what I call the difference between a complex silo structure and a simple silo structure. Simple silo structure is typically going to be top level, two layers deep or 2 levels deep in the URL structure. I can see from the proposed URL structures here that you're already at a complex silo, which is going to be 3 levels deep or even deeper. But I always recommend trying to keep a site more of a simple design. That goes back to the second most important thing in local search, which is site efficiency, right? So if you keep the site more streamlined with less depth to it, then it tends to perform better, because the further you get down or deeper into our URL structure, the less internal link equity those pages or posts at that level receive. Does that make sense? So the closer you can keep pages to the root, the home page, essentially, the more internal link equity they receive. So simple silo structures tend to perform better, but I'm not saying you shouldn't use a complex silo structure. Sometimes it's needed, especially in a multi-location business or a business that serves a wide service area. Sometimes it makes sense, especially across state lines, because it might make sense to build the site out with architecture with very clear hierarchy of the geography within the area that the company serves. So what I would do is have one page for each product or service, in this case, services like lock repair, lock installation, etc. And then one page for each of the locations that they want to target within their service area. And then if there's still kind of a brand component to that, you could have one page for each brand too, right? So for, in this case, Schlage, Medico, I think is how you say that. You could have that too. So then how do you make those connections, the appropriate associations? I just said you only need to say anything on a site one time. Gone are the days, guys, where we used to do, city times service or service times city for every service times every city. Because then you've got, again, in an example of 5 services times 10 locations, you say the same thing over and over and over again for 10 times, right? And that's not needed anymore. So what I would do is one page for each city, or one page for each service, and then one page for each brand in this particular example. And then on a service page, you would have an H2 heading that says these are the brands, right? The manufacturers that we provide services for, and that would be an H2. That then right underneath that, you would have H3 anchor text links with the branded, the manufacturer's name, like Schlage and Medico, right? So now what you're doing with that H2 and those internal links with H3 anchor text, so they're subheadings of that H2. The H2 introduces that internal link element, these are the lock manufacturers that we work with or that we specialize in, right? And then the H3 anchor text links would list Schlage, Medico, however many others, right, that you want to put there. What that does is it creates a direct association between that service, like lock repair or lock installation, and each one of those brands. Well, then on that same page, you would put another H2 statement that says, here's the service areas or service locations that we operate in, or that we provide lock repair in or lock installation in. And then you have an H3 anchor text links that reference the city or towns that are actually linking directly to those city or town pages. So what you're doing there is creating a direct association between each one of those city or town names and that particular service and this lock repair or lock installation. Do you understand? And so in this case, where we're combining three components, the service, brands, and locations, you're creating an association between all three of those in one page. So on a service page, you have that H2 with the internal anchor, or excuse me, the H3 anchor text links to the brands. You have an H2 that introduces the locations that service is relevant to with anchor text links to those location pages. On the brand page, so let's say the Schlage page, these are the services that we provide that we apply or provide for Schlage locks. And then you would reference the services, right? And you would still reference the locations. Again, these are the service area locations that we provide Schlage lock services to. And then, so there you've created a direct association from the brand page now to the services and the locations that are relevant to that brand. And then lastly, so the third component is the location page. Each location page, same thing. The page is optimized for the location, but it has an H2 that says these are the brands that we work with, and here are the services that we work with internal links to those pages. Do you understand? Now you've got one page for each of those. I would lead with the service because, again, I would research that, but I would check. My guess is that the service queries are going to have are much more typical than a brand search for people looking for locksmith type services. At least that's my assumption, right? Hopefully that makes sense if you get it. So if the project scales out, how would I do it with less friction? I would probably, if I expected the campaign to kind of scale and go across a wide area, for example, I would probably build it with a complex silo structure and just think through it. Like, how would I structure? I've talked about this in the mastermind a lot lately because we get members all the time that are asking for recommendations on how I would structure a site for particular campaigns. And I always ask, for enough context for me to provide an actual real site plan. Like, how would I build it if it were my campaign? And so I would look at that and I would try to plan it out based upon, how big of an area, territory are they trying to serve? Are they trying to go national, or are they just going to stay within a particular region? Does it cross state lines? All of those facts matter. Those details matter to determine how I would actually structure the site. So some of that I can't answer without the full context, but I would try to plan it out ahead of time, because if you go with a simpler site architecture, but at a later time you want to expand, and it would have made more sense to have the complex silo structure. It's a more complicated build, hence the name. But if at a later time it would have been better to have built the site with the complex silo structure up front, it becomes a lot more challenging to convert the site to that new structure. It becomes quite a challenge, actually. And so that's why I say I would plan it out ahead of time as best as possible and just build for the scaling right up front, even if it ends up not scaling, if that's clear. All right. So the last question, this one is from Bill, and this is, we're almost out of time anyway, so I won't get to the other thing I wanted to today. He says, what's your favorite AI tool right now that you're actively using for SEO purposes? I would say Cursor. It's not necessarily an SEO tool, but let me close this down for a minute and pull this in. You guys should be able to see this. Like, I'm at my clients project folder here for my white label agency, and you can see all the MCP tools that I have connected here. So like Bright Local, I use for reporting. I've been using that for years. ClickUp for project management. Data for SEO, that's a really good tool. It's very inexpensive, and you can do all kinds of cool things, especially through their MCP and or API connections. Exa, which is a semantic search engine, exa.ai. Go check it out, guys. Exa AI is really, really good for doing research. But on-page SEO, I use that for determining topical relevance. I use on-page SEO, not for on-page optimization, but for link relevancy analysis. So I have that there. Slack, because that's the communication tool that my team and I use. And Wavefront is my tool, like my dashboard where I, manage clients purchase our services, and we have support ticket system and everything else. So this is like my SEO stack that is connected via Cursor here. So basically I run my entire business now through Cursor. And that's why, because I can connect all of my tools into one centralized location. I can call all of I don't have to switch browser tabs anymore, right? Everything is managed right within the Cursor environment, which is a great way to make operations a lot more efficient. I've also found ways to, build workflows and skills and everything else within Cursor, because it has access. It has connections to all those tools, things that typically would have been done manually that could take a lot of different steps and to combined, and a lot of manual work can be automated now because of the connections via Cursor. And it's not Cursor that matters. I just happen to use Cursor. That's my favorite kind of harness, or IDE, but you could do it with Claude or Codex or VS Code, right? Visual Code Studio. So there's a number of things that you could do, that same kind of thing. But I don't really have any new kind of fancy SEO tools. I'm still using the same tools that I've been using for years. Another one is Majestic for backlink analysis. But it's just connecting all of those tools into one centralized location where I can manage my business and call all of those tools and create better, more informative reports, because everything is all consolidated in one dashboard. So it gives me a lot more access to data in a usable fashion, if that's clear. So that's kind of what I would suggest. Is it's not an actual SEO tool, but it's an IDE that allows me to connect all my SEO tools and manage my business in a more efficient way and be more effective with it too. That's clear. So that about does it for the questions today, guys. It's unfortunate that we had somebody that's got nothing better to do with their time than to spam our chat box, but whatever. That shows how important his life is. I appreciate you guys being here. Thanks, Adam. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, everyone.